Thank you so much for being on board the Transatlantic. I love this interview today. I know that your ocean is beautiful and fascinating, and there are going to be a lot of surprises for our audience. So welcome to Transatlantic, Libby.
Thank you, Simone. This is a great podcast, and I've had amazing people on, and just glad I could be here today. Thank you.
Thank you. So look, you might know that's at Transatlantic, we believe that each of us is an ocean of Iraqi thought and wild feelings. So we're gonna go through your ocean, and thanks for letting cross the ocean. And through the 7 questions, like in 7 seas, we can uncover a side of you that hopefully many don't know. Okay, are we ready?
I think so.
First question, Libby. Okay, your maiden voyage, which is the very first journey made by an ocean crosser, was something special. At the age of 27, you co-founded Mother, a company whose creative work has defined truly the last 2 decades. More than often, time turns our memory into what I call cupcakes of the brain. Because what happened in the past always come back to us with a glass of frosting on top. It's very, very sweet. Now, I'm not gonna ask you what's your fondest memory of that time where you co-founded like Mother. What I wanna know from you is, what the least favorite memory? What was the hardest challenge for a 27-year-old girl to co-found such iconic company?
Well, okay, so you pointed out that I was American going to Britain, right? So the hardest part was speaking English, which sounds ridiculous, but I had sort of obsessed over all the D&AD reels and knew all about their advertising and their humor. And so anybody who's lived there pretty much understands that crazy sense of humor and wit and ridicule. So that was basically the hardest thing for me. And it sort of, it turned into the greatest thing because, one day somebody sort of pulled me aside and said, well, the only reason we make fun of you is because we like you. And so I realized that, a lot of that humor was good founded, and kind of that kind of really showed in that, somebody there, it was like the first time you pointed out that I was a woman, and as everybody knows, there's practically none of us in the industry. And so a lot of people started backing me over there, which is pretty rare if you think about, that time in the 90s. And Robert Saville, I met him at GGT, and he was the first person who I call really became my backer. And before that, my creative director at Chiat, Dave Cook, an English guy, sent me over to the UK, and I rang up all his contacts, and that's how I, got to meet everybody, and Mike McKenna, Alistair Wood. So these guys really sort of embraced me and helped, believe in me when, it's pretty hard to have confidence when you're a young person, female, you're in a foreign country. So I've always kind of remembered all those people backing me. And I think it's really important for all of us to kind of pick out people that we think are special in this industry who can help like move it forward and give them backing, right? Because we don't have science in what we do. We don't know what we do is right or wrong. We're like merchants of culture, right? So I think, you don't get to know if you're right or wrong. You don't get to know if your ideas are good or bad. So the only people that can kind of help define this are our mentors and people who glom onto us and kind of tell us we're good. I think creatives, we're kind of fragile, right? So I think that, it took me a long time to understand the ridicule and irony of English. And I was being serious that a lot of times I could not understand what English people were saying to me, literally.
It's funny because I worked in London for 3 years, like, at TBWA London, and like, coming from Italy, already like come like a kid like with a very strong accent. Then I come to London, and like in London they have like a very strong accent. So when I moved to America, I was like this weird combination of like very heavy Italian accent with some kind of like scattered like English words like jumper instead of say sweater, or lift instead of say elevator, or I'm knackered instead of say like I'm exhausted, like things like that, which sounds like so weird for an Italian guy. So I kind of relate to that kind of story, and I found like so funny that among the magnitude of this experience, like co-founding one of the greatest agency of our generation, literally like the language and the accent, the terminology gone the way. Thank you so much. That was really fun.
Awesome.
Second question. There is a saying that goes, never turn your back to the ocean, which means one must be on the watch all the time. Now, you never know when the next big storm is coming. Same rule applies to the advertising industry. Never turn your back and always be on the watch. Now, you never know when the next big storm is coming. Well, here we are. Unfortunately, we are going through the biggest storm ever. Like every ship going a storm, we must keep the bow straight, point at the waves, and trying to plow through them. Now, as a captain of a boat called Odysseus' arm, how do you keep the front of your boat straight? How do you find the resilience to go through this crisis?
Right. I think that, one of the most important things that you said is just everything that's happening in our industry right now. But I think it's sort of one of the most exciting things is that brands need to be modern now. And so I rely a lot mostly on craft, which is kind of at the center of everything that we do. And I really rely on that as a rudder, because I think that these modern brands, these brands are alive. They're like organisms now, right? It's like people are commenting on them, they're participating, they're part of it. And so we've become these new shepherds of these living, breathing things. We used to be brought in to just like send out these messages to people and tell people what they were going to think. But, now we're working so much with the consumers as part of these brands. They're like 50% of it. And not only that, I think these brands are more like newsroom style. They're on all the time. And we as creatives are part of helping be the stewards. We're the new brand stewards of these brands, so that we need to kind of always be awake. And that's a wonderful position to be in. We always kind of have to be thinking about what's next for these brands. How do they fit into culture? How can all of the cultural trends kind of ricochet with them and affect people? So I think, relying on craft and kind of putting that together with our obligation and duties really to these modern brands and helping them is a way to kind of stay sturdy through everything. And I actually think it's a much more interesting place to be in than making one commercial for somebody for a brand each year, or making a print ad. It's much more vibrant now to be part of that.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. And it's true. Like in every crisis, you have like the double coin, right? You have the negative side and the positive side. What I found like for myself is like I kind of go through a reincarnation every single day, meaning like you truly had to reinvent yourself, and every day is not like the day before. The difference with like what we were used to, like, maybe 10 years ago, is like it was a very steady pace, a very like, traditional environment. But I found that nowadays, like because of the crisis, because you had to keep the boat like, straight and crash into the waves, it's very, very like, somehow like even exhausting to wake up and reinvent yourself for your company and for the brand. So I do agree with you. It's like, it's also a very positive time if you look like from a different perspective. definitely. Good. Third question. Now, we go really into like what I call the Greek literature, but you should be familiar with it because your company is called Odysseus Arms. So here's the
I
question.
hope so. I'm the most qualified for your podcast, for sure.
Returning home to Greece from the Trojan War was no pleasure. Now, indeed, very few Greek warriors made it home at all. Among them, there was Odysseus, was actually the one who took like the long way home. He wandered the Mediterranean for 10 years before arriving home. Now, your company is called Odysseus Arms. And I read somewhere that Bay Area, San Francisco, is now home to you. But as you say earlier, your journey began in UK. So you have done a lot of wanderings. What have you learned from all these wanderings?
Okay, well, yeah, a lot of what we do is based in SF and other places around the globe. Well, first of all, just to talk about SF a little bit, because I'm not from here and I really love the culture here. It's very inspiring to be around people who are trying to reinvent the way things can happen in the world. And we're always trying to do that with our job, right? It's like, how can we create a message in a different way, like really shake people up, like get on people's radar? I mean, people's brains are hyper sliced, right? 1,000 different ways. Like, how can we get that little slice of somebody's brain with the work that we make? So I chose SF specifically because it's sort of a culture here to, want to make and break things. And I like that. I find it inspiring to kind of not be settled. So, this town's amazing. It's like you can be out on your paddleboard and skiing in the same day. It's crazy. And I think that all of us pretty much know in terms of wandering that like sitting still it's like scientifically deadly, right? I mean, sitting in a chair is like bad news. But obviously I've lived and worked on 3 continents. So wandering is a huge part of it for me, and always giving people tons of holiday is a big part of it, and encouraging people to go outside. But I think mostly it's just about just not regurgitating things and filling the aquarium tank, refreshing the aquarium tank, right? And putting things in front of you, challenging yourself to deal with situations, kind of just expands and blows up your brain, which is pretty much what creatives thrive on and love to do. And gives us all of our next best ideas is wandering around a bit aimlessly. So yeah, I pretty much made a career out of wandering.
I mean, I love San Francisco. Like, again, like, I'm a kind of like a nomad as well. I lived in San Francisco, and for me, like, San Francisco is synonymous with like Jack Kerouac and like the Beat Generation. It's a great environment. And it's truly like an environment that give you like a lot of like, stimulus, like to create and to write like stuff down, and like, it's great. Good. Okay. There is another poem, and it's called Rumi. It's a Persian poet. Now, there is a famous quote from Rumi that reads, "You are not a drop in an ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop." This concept of multitude and greatness, beautifully expressed by Rumi, is not a novelty. Many writers and intellectuals throughout the history expresses this concept of multitudes. One among them was Rimbaud, the French poet. He used to say, "I is another." Now, if you were to condense your ocean into a single drop, which quality of yours would you actually use to represent your essence?
Really easy questions. One drop of myself.
Drop yourself.
I don't know. I mean, that's probably got to be something about being a dreamer. I mean,
Okay.
that's pretty much the thing that's kept me alive in this industry. And I'm really against the word no, and I'm against walls. And I just feel like there's so many things in our society that are so constrictive and make us want to do everything the same way. You know, even I remember like taking my kids to school in their kindergarten class. It's like they want kids to like color things in the color that they actually are in the world, and they don't want them to, you know, see something differently. And so I feel like every time I step up to the plate with somebody at my company, I want to like dream for them and make them see things that they might not have seen about a project. Maybe a project doesn't feel that creative, and I just like dream for them and take them to places where they don't know they can go. And I feel like that's kind of part of my job. And it's even for this industry as well, about not creating these boxes, but sort of breaking them down. And the boxes are like all around us, I think, in society. Like they're fighting us
Mhm.
every day. They're trying to constrain us and put us in these like little tight places. And I find that really annoying. Like I'm really upset by that. And
Oh man,
so
like yeah, we like the genius of boxes in advertising. You know, it's like there is the title, which is a box. There is a cubicle, which is another box, and then there is like your specific skills, which is another box. We are like walking Matryoshka. That's what I think. So actually, to decompose and deconstruct ourselves, it takes a lot of energy. But I love what you say, because I'm also very against like boxes and like, you know, very against like structure and rules, and who say that you need to write that way, who say that you need to read that way. And so it's like, you know, I really feel that your answer really resonate with me. Really good. Yeah, I mean, we should like just like fuck boxes. I mean, it's like just like, you know, just do it for the passion of doing it, you know. That's what I feel we should
totally. I
do.
mean, sometimes you just got to dream a little to get people like back into that, like challenging it.
Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
think it's powerful. Yeah.
You know, sometimes to give myself this is gonna make you laugh, but sometimes to give myself an injection of like passion, I listen to Patti Smith, like Because the Night Belonged to Lovers. Like from now and then I listen to the like song just to remind myself, like, you know, I mean, I love Patti and like, you know, and their poems, but just to remind myself, like, you know, there is a way to break through the box. There is a way to stomp onto the box. And like the same reason why I have this like, you know, padlock from Sid Vicious, like the R Rabbit padlock, also called the Rebel padlock. It's the same reason. So
Well,
anyway,
just to add to that, I mean, have you watched that movie, Ready Player One?
I sure
Okay,
did.
well, the creator, the game creator of Oasis, which is the whole center of that book and movie, James Halliday. So, I mean, his whole thing was about like a constant vacation, wandering everywhere, right? And going anywhere, being able to
I
do
remember.
anything. That was his premise of like creating total happiness for people with that game. It's one of my
Yeah,
favorite
I
movies. So I
remember.
had to bring that up.
Good. Okay. Please allow me like the one of the last question about like Odysseus and the Greek history. So the name of your company, Odysseus Arms, awakes in me memories of long winter afternoons, like studying Greek and old literature. One of the most famous like Odysseus fights take place against Polyphemus, which was like a giant with one eye on his forehead. Now, Polyphemus, the son of Poseidon, has one single eye, just one eye in the forehead, and he looks invincible. I mean, you look at this guy, you think like, I can't fucking defeat this guy, right? Now, Odysseus, who is a very, very smart man, put up a fight with him using his cunning, using his smartness. Now, I'm not gonna tell the whole story. I'm sure like people interested in this can go and look it up. But my question for you is this. In the creative fight that we put every day, that we do every day, when was the last time that you had to use a canning solution to find either like a creative solution or a shortcut or an escape from that box that we were talking about earlier?
Right. I think the thing that comes to mind is doing a project with Caitlyn Jenner, and so that box, believe it or not, was all around how people feel about the trans community. So on the outside, that creative brief just looked like changing her show from Bruce Jenner and Keeping Up with the Kardashians, like, and that's like a shit show of a show, right? It's like
Right.
something that people don't respect. And then on the other side, we have somebody who's changing their gender, and we have transgender people with one of the worst suicide rates ever. It's like 47% of people will try to commit suicide. And their families and their friends, like a lot of these people, don't feel safe. So that was a really difficult thing to work with the E Network. Like, how do we help Caitlyn and not make this into like another Kardashian sort of mess? And so with that project, we were able to kind of change that lens and turn it around and help E Entertainment explain like how they could become part of this movement. And the result from that was, I mean, there were like endless movies where people just went on YouTube and just talked about how they never knew how their son or daughter felt, and just kind of brought out a lot of empathy. But I would say, just, this is always the case, right? But the brief, the thing that we were presented with, just, it didn't look like what the solution needed to be. And just being able to take a step back and figure out how to be agile and move around that. And I think most importantly, for all of us, is like, how do we have the biggest impact, right? We have a really big stage for not being like celebrities. We have a really big stage to reach people. We have a lot of power to create conversations that can change a lot of things in our culture around the world. So just like remembering when we wake up, like this power that we have, it's really cool. And just remembering that when we get a brief, and it might not just be the most straightforward solution or thing that we need to do, and we might need to create a lot more conversations with the people around us to be able to have the impact that we need. So I think that's probably what comes to mind the most.
Right. And you mentioned a word that's I'm a big fan of, empathy. And I think like doing that kind of work for Caitlyn Jenner, and like going through that kind of like phase in life, like, is so meaningful, like, and so heavy for certain kind of aspects, to use empathy in a creative way to touch on the chord is essential. And I think that's for an industry like the creative industry, it's a tough brief, because we lack empathy. We do lack empathy a lot. Most of the time, I don't think we even remember the word empathy. We take it like, we hide behind other words. And if we use it as a buzzword. So I think that work that you guys did, like for Caitlyn Jenner, it was truly like a wonderful work that's like showed the universe, the planets, like how you could use like empathy and work on the empathy side, like in a creative way. Good. Last question, I see the shore. And this question is for every single guest that comes on board. If there was a wind that blow your sails, what would the name of the wind be?
I think it's Frosty Wind. I think that's it.
Oh, wow.
I think just staying frosty and never really feeling complacent. I pretty much feel that way anyways, naturally. Like every day I wake up and I feel sort of like, how do we need to change something? How do we need to make things better? But just staying frosty, and it's just part of who I am and what I do, and kind of questioning every direction that we're doing, and never letting things go, like never being happy with where we are. It's, you know, craft is my number one passion, and staying frosty is important to me.
Stay frosty, man. I love it. That like it's the equivalent of my stay gold. You know, it's like I love stay gold because it remind me like one of my favorite movie, like The Outsiders. Like, you know, when Johnny Boy say like stay gold, Johnny Boy. You know, but stay frosty is like I never heard that, so I really like it. So I'm gonna use it as a motto.
I
Hey,
like
look.
stay gold too. It's good.
Hey, look, Libby, thank you so much for being like, you know, such a great guest and for letting me cross your ocean. It was a wonderful journey. And I hope that our ships like cross paths again in the near future, okay?
Thanks,
Thank
Simone.
you so
It's been
much.
great. Thank you so much.
Bye, bye.